Francois?
The blonde guy.
Yeah. So Marc Francois, if anyone doesn't know, is one of the leading ERG members from out. He's his constituency, I think, is Basildon. It's one of the bigger Essex, South Essex constituencies. And people are going to hate me for this, but Francois really does reflect his constituency, and he's rabid, no economic policy, just immigration-driven side of the Brexit debate. And that's the problem. If no economics comes in, if there's no economic protection comes in, even looking at, probably the potential kind of easing of tariffs, because, even someone like Rees-Mogg would look at the easing of tariffs if we were to go for a no-deal break. As impossible as that sounds, I suppose it can be achieved. Someone like Francois, I just don't think would care. Francois would just throw us out without... would just kind of throw the baby out the bathwater without thinking about it.
Just to lower immigration rates.
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think that... I don't know whether Francois gives a shit about immigration rates or not, but I know he wants to play to his constituency. And people, again, as I said, people are going to hate me for this, but the working class Brexit voter is the most just rabid, no economic policy, no fault in regards to trade and business, just absolute... The only reason they voted for Brexit was immigration, and it's South Essex. South Essex is rabidly leave just based on immigration. And I know this from personal experience. I'm not talking out of assumption here. I know the area, I know people, I've, family members that, are roughly from sort of, or in-laws at least, are from around the area, so...
Well, these are people that would be anti-immigration even before Brexit had become a terminology, as it were. And it's, it's people in South Essex, but it's also, of course, people in the north. And it's something that poll after poll for decades now has wanted not to stop immigration, but to lower the levels and to slow it down a little bit. And this was the first or the only opportunity that has there been to have an impact through a form of direct democracy where they've been able to actually make the statement on that.
Let me state this clearly. I have nothing against looking at tightening somewhat EU immigration. We must have criminal background checks. We must, make exceptions not to allow certain people in on criminal background and the like. I'm not coming at this from a absolutely open the borders pro-immigration stance. I'm coming at it from don't think about anything else but immigration, and to quote Boris, fuck business. That perspective. Just to keep the electorate happy. Sorry, sometimes you have to do things that don't, that pisses off the electorate. And if it means saving jobs, if it means ease of trade between international conglomerates and businesses and the flowing of free goods across borders, sorry, you sometimes have to piss off the electorate.
Well, this goes to the question of how absolutely necessary are those things linked? Because the argument from the European Union standpoint would be that capital and freedom of movement of people freedom of movement of capital and freedom of movement of people are so interlocked that you can't have one without the other, or you won't get the full benefits of one without the other.
And they're right to a certain degree. But hence what I'm saying here, which is, I'm not saying stop immigration from the EU, I'm saying stop unneeded characters and personalities that are just absolutely a threat to the nation, or a threat to the good of certain areas and, populations. And in big part, if you're looking specifically at EU immigration, if you're talking particularly from the likes of the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, the biggest threat that certain EU immigrants are actually a threat to is not people from outside the community. They're a threat to people inside their national community, that they may extort money, they may try to, sent into slavery. They might have tried to send into forced labour.
Well, did you see that story? I think it was around in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Where there was the biggest slave trade that had been going on in the UK for years.
Yeah. So
that was all the Polish people being enslaved by other Polish people.
Yeah. So if anyone doesn't know this story, this come out early this week. A family. A sort of organised crime family of Roma gypsies from Poland, and were basically convicted of, I think it's the biggest human slavery case in UK history, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they basically got hold of alcoholics, ex-convicts, general, and maybe I think people with learning difficulties, any kind of, vulnerable character over in Poland, got them to the UK promising work. They got work, but they also got,
wasn't...
they also got, basically house arrest and 50p a day.
Yes, there was the... from my understanding of it, there was, for the women who came over, they were shoved into the eldest profession, and for the men who came over, they were shoved into manual labour for 7 days a week. I didn't
hear the prostitution part, but it doesn't surprise me, because generally with the Baltic states, and just for... all intents and purposes, I'm just going to include Poland into the Baltic states. I know some autistics are going to get, mental and say, no, it's just a stone in Lithuania and Latvia. Poland's history is very much entwined with those countries, particularly Lithuania. So going back to what we were saying, yeah, there's a big issue with human trafficking from those states, and also of women who are not from those countries. They're from the neighbouring countries, they're not in the EU, Russia, Ukraine. They get trafficked via gangs from those countries, from Latvia, Lithuania, into the UK to get forced into prostitution with the promise of legitimate work. We all know this, so I don't need to tell this to anyone. I'm just making the point that, there are issues with certain amounts of unfettered immigration. When I mean unfettered, I mean unchecked. And not unchecked as in the usual kind of rhetoric of, they're just forcing us on us, the floodgates are open. I'm not saying that, I'm literally saying the literal meaning of unchecked, which is not checking criminal backgrounds, not checking, I suppose, employment opportunity, employment background. If you're just allowing anyone through without any kind of proof of employment, and it could go into anything. They could be shifting guns for it, could be shifting money. And again, I'm totally open to, for the most part, e-immigration. I ain't got an issue for the most part. I've got an issue with further expansion of the EU for the moment, but I've got currently for member states that are part of the union, I've got not much issue with e-immigration currently.
Okay. Well, where would there be a country line, as it were? So I know this is completely hypothetical, because now it's extremely unlikely. But if Turkey were ever to go into the European Union, would that give you more pause for thought?
To make this clear, for the moment, Turkey is not joining the EU. Yeah. It was a candidate and I followed a lot of Turkey's candidate sort of period for a long time. It became a candidate state in the 80s. There's always doubt around it because it's always had an air of authoritarianism, and there's always been a million coups every 2 years.
Yeah.
Under Erdogan, the authoritarian current sort of dictator of Turkey, 2016, Erdogan was the quote unquote victim of a coup attempt. It may have been a coup attempt. It may have been staged by. This is kind of common thought. It may have been staged by Erdogan's forces to basically just rid certain parts of the government, of the military, of Gulenists. If anyone doesn't know, Gulenists are basically just people who have a certain amount. They're basically they're followers of a religious imam in Turkey called something Gulen. I can't remember his first name.
He's in exile in New York, I think, isn't he?
Is he in New York? I thought he was in Kosovo, if I'm correct.
Was he? I thought
he's got a lot of his followers are sort of dispersed amongst the Balkans at the moment because they've fled Turkey. He might be in New York. I think. Oh no, you're right. He's in America. Sorry, yeah. He's got a lot of his right hand men and his followers are actually now dispersed across the Balkans, and there's a big kind of controversy going on where certain states are giving into Turkey and just deporting a Gulenist, Kosovo being one of them, because Kosovo receives a lot of funding from Turkey, because Turkey is one of the bigger economies of the Balkans, if not the biggest, and Kosovo needs the fucking money and the infrastructure. Romania, I think, has refused to deport quite a lot of them because Romania and Turkey come to loggerheads quite often on a foreign affairs kind of issue. It's to do with ethnic Turkish villages on the eastern coast. Turkey likes to fund them, and certain parts of the Romanian government see it's kind of an infiltration of the Romanian system. It's a bit weird. Going back to the original point, because we're kind of veering off now. You said there's a country line, as in what?
Yeah, if there is somewhere where you would think, okay, if you're going to have unfettered immigration from that country, then I'm definitely, or not unfettered.
It's
but
it's a currently flowing situation, and it always kind of changes on developments in certain countries. I would have said this time 10 years ago, we weren't ready for Croatia to join the EU. And this is at a time when I went on holiday to Croatia. I love Croatia. I've got nothing against Croatia, but its politics is too wrapped up in the war of the last, of the end of the 90s. There's too much real political discourse between certain communities. There's a lot of guns floating around, a lot of illegal weaponry. But Croatia's already a part of the EU. We secretly, as a country, the UK, dropped. I say secretly, I don't mean in a conspiratorial tone, but basically quietly we dropped the restrictions on Croatian citizens at the end of last year. Most people don't realise this because it was supposed to have been in place, I think, to at least 2020, because they joined in 2013 and there's usually a 7-year clause, so it means that the borders would have opened 2020. But silently, our government Foreign Office dropped restrictions at the end of last year, and a lot of countries did, and I don't know what was behind that.
End of last year, so that was
2018.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if Boris was because Boris would have left by then, because that would have been a bloody.
We're talking.
That would have been something that they could have used in the leadership debate.
We're talking around August 2018, and literally what I'm talking about here.
It would have been Hunt who was in charge of the Foreign Office at that point. Then,
yeah, and this is just not reported on at all, and no, it never should. Probably shouldn't be. I don't know why it's going. There's no real problem with it. It's just because, again, I've got nothing against Croatia, and for the most part, it's a very safe country. But yeah, because we're talking, post-Brexit election, post-Brexit referendum, they wanted to keep that quiet. I don't know what convinced them to drop it early, but
yeah, it does seem like it's a bit counterproductive, particularly if we were due to leave in March.
I think I've got a personal theory, which is if it come to 2020, and that's during a transition period. If we leave this year, that's during a transitional period, and for anyone who doesn't know, the 2-year transitional period between 2019 and 2021, 22, we have to still stick to EU laws, and that means we will still have freedom of movement. If during a transitional period that restriction was dropped, then come to an end. Could you imagine the fucking political, the fury and outrage that happened during the transitional period?
Oh, I see what you mean. So you'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off now and sort of open it up so that it goes. You don't have to worry about it happening during the transitional period.
The Conservative Party doesn't want to deal during the transitional period with the Daily Mail coming out and saying. During forced transitional period, the restrictions on the Croatian immigration have now been dropped.
That makes a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense why even the hardline Brexiteers haven't brought it up, haven't mentioned it that much, because it's just a sort of for the good of the party, shall we say.
And look, for all intensive purposes, the reason I know quite a bit about this current situation with Croatian restrictions on immigration is because I've actually got a soft spot for Croatia. Somewhere I've gone on holiday a lot. It's a beautiful place. I like the people. It's just interesting how that happened at the end of last year, and that's my theory. I just don't think they wanted to deal with the reporting during the transitional period of that restriction coming to an end. Let's get back on track a bit. Let's kind of end what we were talking about in regards to the leadership debate. What your kind of closing thoughts on it?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I think it is slightly depressing, but at the same time, I would prefer either of the candidates to the previous Prime Minister that we've had. At least they've got a bit of personality. At least they're willing to put themselves up for the campaign rather than doing the backroom deals to ensure that she didn't even have to have a membership vote, as it were, with Theresa May. And I can say that I along